Escaped slaves were changing their own lives, but they were also transforming the fate of the nation. By the summer of 1862, President Lincoln faced a dilemma. Not only was the North losing the war, but runaway slaves were forcing him finally to confront the question of slavery itself. Lincoln's first objective in the war had been to save the Union. "I have no purpose," he had proclaimed, "to interfere with the institution of slavery." But now, military necessity converged with the moral imperative of ending slavery. This was the country in 1862.
It was. And therefore, for Lincoln, a place he could escape to. He came here pretty often in the summer of '62, which is this critical summer where he was writing the proclamation.
This is Camp David.
This is his Camp David. As he wrote and made the journey to this cottage, he would have seen Black refugees camped out all over the city. What do you do with them? You just keep ignoring them? Enslaved people were making the war their war. They were making the war about freedom and emancipation.
African Americans are arguing the easiest way to win the war is to emancipate slaves. And they make a brilliant point that eventually the Lincoln administration accepts that you need us. If you want to win this war, you need us.
Lincoln knew he could no longer avoid committing himself and the nation to slavery's eradication. On September 22nd, Lincoln showed his cabinet the outlines of a bold plan. Emancipate the slaves in enemy territory and encourage them to find safety behind Union lines. On January 1st, 1863, he issued the final draft to the nation. From that day on, it read, "Any slave within a rebellious state shall be thenceforward, and forever free." Though the proclamation didn't abolish slavery, nor declare all slaves free, it was a powerful statement, redefining the war's purpose as ending slavery. For African Americans, enslaved or free, the Emancipation Proclamation was their Declaration of Independence.
When you read the words in the Emancipation Proclamation that say, "thenceforward and forever free," you don't read or hear the words, the exceptions, the limitations that follow. You hear that you're free. And that was all that was needed. That snowball was on that steep cliff. It just got kicked off and there was no stopping it.
The proclamation encouraged slaves to abandon their plantations, but it couldn't help them do so. They would have to run that risk themselves in a gamble for freedom.
The Union military is constantly on the move. You've got to make a decision knowing that you will have to navigate enemy territory. The amazing thing is that these 500,000 people, they took that chance, they left.
They left.
Everything that they knew on the hope that they were part of this age of emancipation and age of freedom.
The proclamation held one more surprise. It granted Black men the right to fight for the Union.
Imagine knowing that they could now actually take up legally arms in their own defense.
Revolutionary.
Revolutionary. That has to be the most important thing about the Emancipation Proclamation.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt.
A white man could be legally killed by a Black man.
A slaveholder could be legally killed by his former slave.
That's heavy.
That's everything.
Nearly 200,000 African Americans enlisted in the military during the war, including my great-granduncle. They fought for themselves, they fought for each other, and they fought for those who had been left behind. But most of all, they fought for a future with hope, a future of freedom and equal rights. Their stories are honored here at the African American Civil War Memorial and Museum in Washington, D.C. Harry, given the fact that the military today is so black, my students find it extraordinarily difficult to believe that black men had to fight for the right to fight, as it were. Why?
It's like the 1940s and 50s and the arguments that African Americans, the Negro, cannot play basketball because it requires too much of the intellect. Well, that's the argument during the Civil War. They're not intelligent enough. They don't have the agility, the courage, the determination to be a good soldier.
While the Emancipation Proclamation gave African American men the right to fight, it did nothing to guarantee their equal treatment. Northern white soldiers were skeptical of black soldiers. Southern soldiers simply reviled them. Confederate President Jefferson Davis made it clear: all black Union soldiers would be treated as slaves in rebellion.
Jeff Davis would come out with a proclamation stating that if a colored soldier is captured, he will be returned to his owner. If the owner could not be found, the state would take the responsibility and they would be put to hard labor. But the Confederate soldiers would behave not according to protocol in many cases.
Perhaps the Confederate Army's worst atrocities against African American troops came at the Battle of Fort Pillow, Tennessee, in 1864. As defeat loomed, African American soldiers attempted to surrender. Confederate troops massacred them.
255 African American soldiers were given no quarters. No quarters means that when you're captured as a prisoner of war, they do not take you through the regular protocol.
What you're saying is they wouldn't allow black soldiers to surrender. They just killed them.
You do not allow them the honor of being a soldier.
255 black soldiers were killed in cold blood. It was the Confederacy's brutal reminder to African Americans of the price they would pay for rising up against slavery. Only 6 months later, black soldiers would have their revenge. It was September 29th, 1864. Union troops assembled in New Market Heights, a small town right outside of Richmond, the capital of the Confederacy. They were led by Benjamin Butler, the same Benjamin Butler who early in the war had refused to return fugitive slaves to the South. At New Market Heights, he commanded black troops to lead the assault.
Butler, before the assault, he rides around through the troops and tells them, you go in crying, remember Fort Pillow. They're up against veteran Texas troops, and to take New Market Heights, capture the closest position to Richmond. You want to send troops who have the determination that won't back down. They're under strict orders not to stop to fire. And your comrades are falling consistently as they're moving forward. And the 4th and 6th United States colored troops, they get almost wiped out. So it's the next wave. But it's not easy for the next wave either. They don't stop. They just keep coming. Confederates are hearing this, remember Fort Pillow, and they withdraw from the position. I've read some scholars who would say, well, they just decided they'd defend another position. That's always interesting to me.
Yeah, the position's called cover my ass.
That's why the performance of United States colored troops in these battles is so important, because they don't stop. They don't just say, we captured New Market Heights and we're partying, the game's over. They continue. It's only a matter of time before Richmond falls.
So that's it. The cake's all dough, as my daddy would say.